What would Swansea City do in the Premier League if they had all their best players? That's actually a pretty decent team. This Swansea side has decent attacking prowess with Conor Gallagher, Morgan Gibbs, White and Danny James linking up with Victor Gyökeres, and a very strong centre-back partnership in Cameron Carter-Vickers and Mark Ahey. But can they survive the Premier League? Gyökeres finishes their top goal scorer. They lose in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup to Newcastle United. They reach the 5th round of the FA Cup losing to Spurs, and they just hold on to Premier League status with a 17th place finish. What would Middlesbrough do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? Well, Middlesbrough's attack is packed full of speed merchants like Marcus Tavernier, Adama Traore and Folarin Balogun, and not to mention Morgan Rogers as their playmaker general. But how would they do in the Premier League? Well, Morgan Rogers their top goal scorer for the season. Well, Middlesbrough reached the quarter-finals of the Carabao Cup, only losing to Man City on penalties. They reached the 3rd round of the FA Cup, losing to Everton, and by mere goal difference they finished 18th place. Hard luck. What would Norwich do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. Whilst their defence don't look like the strongest unit, holy moly, their attack is stacked. With the likes of Jacob Murphy and Christos Zolis on the wings, and with England heroes James Maddison and Harry Kane leading the attack. Hey look, they got a decent bench as well. But how will Norwich do in the Premier League? Well, surprisingly, it's Christos Zolis as the top goal scorer for Norwich. They lose in round 3 of the Carabao Cup to Southampton, but they go on an epic FA Cup run and reaching the semi-finals, losing to the ghosts of Christmas past, and they manage a 10th place finish. All in all, I think that's a great success. What would Millwall do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. To the naked eye, this looks like a championship team pushing for promotion. But the real jewels in this upgraded Millwall crown are strikers like Chris Wood and Harry Kane. But how will they do in the Premier League? Well, to the surprise of nobody, Harry Kane's the top goal scorer. Millwall lose in the 2nd round of the Carabao Cup to Birmingham City, but they go on a decent FA Cup run, losing to Arsenal in the quarter-finals. But they finish in 19th place in a season where all 3 teams get relegated by April. What would Leicester City do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is the team. Well, the spirit of the 2016 is still alive in this team with Kasper Schmeichel, Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante. And ignoring the left and right backs, there's quality all over the pitch. With Harry Maguire leading defence, Yuri Tielemans partnering with N'Golo Kante, an attack spearheaded by... Hang on, where have I seen you two guys before? And wowee, what a surprise! Harry Kane with another goal boot. Well, Leicester go on a decent Carabao Cup run, losing to Arsenal in the quarter-finals. They reach round 5 of the FA Cup, losing to Manchester United on penalties. Managed to finish 6th in the league.
Hooray, European qualification!
What would Stoke City do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. It's a very well-rounded team with decent cover in every position. The bright spots here are the centre-back partnership in Cameron Carter-Vickers and Nathan Collins, the Rabona master himself, Jadon Philogene, and the attack partnership of Xherdan Shaqiri and Liam Delap. But how will Stoke do in the Premier League? And it's Jadon Philogene with his 5-star skill moves that's the top goal scorer. Stoke reach round 3 of the Carabao Cup, losing to Newcastle United. They reach round 4 of the FA Cup, losing to Southampton. But agonisingly, they only finish in 18th place. Sad times. What would Oxford United do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. Essentially, this is a team that's fighting for promotion from the Championship. The real glue of this team is the Golden Glove wearing wind-up merchant that is Emiliano Martinez. How will they do in the Premier League? Well, it's Tony Martinez as their top goal scorer. They reach round 3 of the Carabao Cup, losing to Norwich on penalties. They lose to Everton in round 3 of the FA Cup, but they finish dead last in the Premier League. But hey, at least they didn't get 11 points. Oh look, Sammy Martinez walking down the tunnel. Hey, Amy! Good luck playing in the Championship next season! What would Derby County do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? Or more specifically, can they beat their 2008 record of 11 points? And this is their team. Well, if you ignore the left flank, this is a pretty balanced team. With a strong defensive leader in Fikayo Tomori, and creativity in midfield from Premier League stalwarts like Will Hughes, Mason Mount, and Welsh hero Harry Wilson. But how will they do in the Premier League? Well, it's Harry Wilson that ends up top goal scorer. Will Derby losing round 3 of the Carabao Cup to Aston Villa in a tournament that was almost won by Coventry City. In FA Cup, they lose in round 3 to Brentford in a cup competition that was almost won by Cardiff City. And while sadly they did finish 19th in the league, they almost tripled their 2008 total. I think this is a good redemption arc, right? What would Hull City do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. What can I say about this team? For starters, the defence is absolute quality. Not to mention they got one of Europe's finest goalkeepers, Andy Robertson, Ola Aina, a superb centre-back partnership, a Rabona master, Danny Dyer's favourite son,
Sweat.
and Liam Delap. But how will Hull do in the Premier League? Well, Danny Dyer Jr. is a top goal scorer, while they get giant killed in the 2nd round of the Carabao Cup to Barrow. They lose in round 5 of the FA Cup to Manchester City, and they finish 6th in the league. Hey, they've made it into Europe, boys and girls. What would Sheffield Wednesday do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. While they might not have the strongest defence in midfield, at least it's backed up by Golden Glove winner Emiliano Martinez. Their right flank locked in with James Tavernier and Jacob Murphy. Premier League stalwart Ross Barkley and... Well, it's George Hurst that bangs in all the goals for Sheffield Wednesday. They lose in round 2 of the Carabao Cup to Stoke City. Oh dear, they get thrashed in round 3 of the FA Cup to Swansea City. They finish their return to the Premier League as the highest placed Yorkshire team in 12th place. What would would Birmingham City do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. Essentially, this is a slight upgrade on their current team, being helped by the Northern Rock connection of Dan Burn and Chris Word. And the real reason why you're watching this video today, and his little brother. But how will they do in the Premier League? Jude Bellingham just about finishes top goal scorer. Birmingham losing round 2 of the Carabao Cup to Bournemouth. In round 4 of the FA Cup to Leeds. And they finished 13th in the league. What would Coventry City do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. Whilst the defence and midfield are decent and somewhat balanced, the real strength in this team comes from their attack, with the likes of Jacob Murphy, James Maddison, and Victor Gyökeres up front. But how would they do in the Premier League? Victor Gyökeres is far and away the top goal scorer in this team. Coventry City reach round 2 of the Carabao Cup, losing to Fulham on penalties. And just like 2024, they go on an FA Cup semi-final run, losing to Spurs. And they finish 15th in the league. Not bad, but 2 wins from domestic cup glory. What would Bristol City do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. As a strong championship team, the bulk of their current team remain. Whilst pretty much the whole defence gets upgraded, the real stars of this team are Alex Scott, Chris Wood, and the real reason you're watching this video today, Antoine Semenyo. Even Tammy Trepunti makes the bench. But how are they doing in the Premier League? Antoine Semenyo's the top goal scorer. Oh my, they lose in round 2 of the Carabao Cup to Sheffield United. They go out in round 3 of the FA Cup to Sunderland. But by the skin of their teeth, Bristol City finished 17th in the Premier League. Hooray, survival! How would Watford do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. If you take out the centre-back partnership and their goalkeeper, this team has quality. Between Nathan Ake and Dominic Mysterio in defence, their midfield and attack is littered with talents such as Richarlison, Will Hughes, James Garner, Dodi Lukebakio, Ismail Assar, and Joao Pedro. And they're backed up by at least 3 more 79 rated strikers. How would they do in the Premier League? Not only is Dodi Lukebakio the top goal scorer, he also wins the Premier League Golden Boot! Watford lose in round 3 of the Carabao Cup to Spurs. They also lose in round 3 of the Carabao Cup to Reading. But the league was what Watford were really trying their best at, as they finished 12th place. What would Blackburn Rovers do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? It's their team. Whilst their attack is certainly not the strongest pillar of their team is their defence. As Jared Branthwaite, Jan-Paul van Hekken, Tosin Adarboyoyo are marshalled by one of the best goalkeepers in the world, David Raya. They've also got Adam Morton in midfield. And look! Harvey Elliott gets a start. But how would they do in the Premier League? Joshua King gets top goal scorer. Blackburn reach round 4 of the Carabao Cup, losing to a team who are definitely guilty. They lose in round 3 of the FA Cup to Spurs in a cup competition that was almost won by Ipswich Town. And they finished 13th in the league. Quite a successful return, I think. What would West Bromwich Albion do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. And the strongest part of this squad definitely has to be their attack, with its front line led by Serge Gnabry, Jacob Murphy, Morgan Rogers, and Lakaka. But how would they do in the Premier League? Well, Jacob Murphy is their top goal scorer. West Brom go out of round 3 of the Carabao Cup to Aston Villa. Oh god, not the noisy neighbours. They reach round 4 of the FA Cup, losing to Leicester City. And they finish in 18th place. An attack like that, that's pretty bad luck. What would Preston North End do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. On the face of it, it's a very strong championship team. Well, that link up between goalkeeper and striker down the left channel looks pretty jacked, baby. I mean, imagine the ball starting a pick foot to Alvaro Carreras, through ball to Anthony Gordon, finishes by Danny Welbeck. God, it smells of goals galore. But how would they do in the Premier League? Well, I don't think they utilise that left channel, as Callum Lang is the top goal scorer. Preston North End reach round 3 of the Carabao Cup, losing to Newcastle. They go in round 3 of the FA Cup to Middlesbrough on penalties. And by the narrowest of margins, Preston only finish in 19th place. Oh, that's hard luck. What would Charlton Athletic do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. If you take out some of the championship level players, it's a very strong team all round. I mean, 2 strong goalkeepers? When does this ever happen? Not to mention they have the likes of Ezri Konsa, Conor Gallagher, and Ademola Lookman in their team. But how would they do in the Premier League? Well, unsurprisingly really, but Ademola Lookman's their top goal scorer. Charlton Athletic go out in round 2 of the Carabao Cup to West Ham. Oh god, not the noisy neighbours. They reach round 4 of the FA Cup, losing to Burnley. Only managed 19th place? I don't know about you guys, but there must be a glitch in the Matrix somewhere. What would Queen's Park Rangers do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. Now, this has the look of a recently Premier League promoted team that has spent all of its prize money on Eberechi Eze and Danny Parejo. Then some of its leftover child support money on Carl Walker. But how would they do in the Premier League? Eberechi Eze is the top goal scorer. QPR got in round 2 of the Carabao Cup to West Ham. They got in round 4 of the FA Cup to Leicester City. And they survived with a few games to spare, finishing 17th in the league. Hopefully next season they can use all that TV money to buy a time machine and bring in all the Ferdinands. What would Sheffield United do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. And by God, this is the team they should have used in 2024. Hendo's in goals. Morgan Gibbs-White is back. They've even got internet sensations Iliman Ndiaye and Harry Maguire. But how would they do in the Premier League? Morgan Gibbs-White's their top goal scorer. Sheffield United got in round 2 of the Carabao Cup to Everton, probably in revenge for stealing Iliman Ndiaye. They reached round 5 of the FA Cup, losing to Chelsea, and they finished 9th in the league. Well, me and a time machine going back to 2024 to use this team, and going back to 2025 too.
仲唔嚟？
How would Southampton do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. And by God, had they used this team in the 24-25 season, they'd be going to Europe, not in the Championship. Let's be honest, folks, the real stars of this show are Big Verge and the best player in the world, Sadio Mane. But how are they doing in the Premier League? Che Adams is the top goal scorer for Southampton. They go out in round 3 of the Carabao Cup to Brighton on penalties. They go out in round 3 of the FA Cup to Portsmouth on penalties. Now this picture here, this isn't relevant. But clearly they didn't give a South Coast shit about the cups. They finished in 6th place and IRL qualifies for the Europa League. What would Portsmouth do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. Did someone say EFL Championship Team of the Season? Thankfully, their strong spots come in the form of their centre-backs in Adam Webster and Christian Burgess. But how are they doing in the Premier League? George Hurst is their top goal scorer. Portsmouth reached the quarter-finals of the Carabao Cup, losing to Newcastle on penalties. They also reached the quarter-finals of the FA Cup, losing to Crystal Palace. And it was all about the cut run because Portsmouth didn't give a South Coast about the league as they finished in last place. So hey, at least they didn't get 11 points like Derby in 2008. What would Ipswich Town do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team. With an upgraded attack and defence, this team is Premier League ready. The star boys of this team include Trevor Chalobah and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Wait, haven't I seen you before? And the return of strikers Liam Delap and Chris Wood. Hang on, I've definitely seen you before. But how would they do in the Premier League? Will Jaden Philogene score another Rabona? Well, he certainly may have done, but Amari Hutchinson's the top goal scorer. Ipswich Town reached round 3 of the Carabao Cup, losing to Cardiff on penalties. They reached round 4 of the FA Cup, losing to Arsenal on penalties. Oh, in another sim, what could have been before. And they finished 15th in the league. Oh, go on, I'll show you Jaden Philogene's goal again. How would Wrexham do in the Premier League if they kept all their best players? And this is their team, and as a symptom of playing non-league football for nearly 20 years, this is actually their best team. However, reintroduced to the subs bench are Mark Harris and James McLean. But how are they doing in the Premier League? Lewis O'Brien is their top goal scorer. But Wrexham go on a decent Carabao Cup run, reaching the quarter-finals, losing to Wolves. They even reached round 5 of the FA Cup, losing to 00 Southampton. Well, those cup runs were where Wrexham's energy was spent, as they can only manage a 19th place in the league. Follow and subscribe for more!